Thank you so much for clicking onto this video because this is the hardest video I have ever had to make. Literally, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I didn't think we would be asked this hard question so soon. I was kind of hoping it would never get asked, but I'm pretty sure this question is inevitable when you are somebody who plays a game like Pokemon or is into the series of Pokemon. And that is, what is your top 10 favorite Pokemon of all time? This was super hard. There's, as of right now, with Scarlet and Violet, there's over 1,000 different Pokemon. That's hard to pick. So, and literally, I have a list here, like crossing out Pokemon names and figuring out which ones I like the most because it was so difficult. I even tried to do top 15 to think, maybe that'd be a little bit easier. And even then, that was difficult. Going through this, you will see that I have let's say 3rd place, 4th place, 5th place. I will have 2 or 3 different Pokemon just tied, right? It is insane with how hard it was to place Pokemon 1st, 2nd, 3rd. So I thought it would kind of maybe make sense that some Pokemon would be tied, but honestly this is more like a top 20, 25, 50. I don't know how much I even did, but yeah, I'm hoping you guys enjoy an understanding of why I like these Pokemon. This took me weeks. Literally throughout the video you'll see I'll have different earrings, but the same shirt because I have 2 of the same shirts for some. There's also me with a completely different shirt, maybe same earrings or no earrings or whatever, because it's all taken on different days. I tried to manage my own life, work, obviously the streams and all this stuff, so I tried my best for you guys. So again, I'm hoping you enjoy, you get an understanding of why I like these Pokemon, and that's pretty much it. Don't forget, if you want to join and be a part of our Pokemon adventure, I do live stream that on Twitch. The link for that will be down below. Please do join, and we'll see where things go from there. So enjoy. Thanks so much for watching. Learn something, I suppose. I don't know. Here we go. Let's just start. Fun fact for you guys, and this might blow a couple minds here. I was first introduced to Zeraora in Pokemon Sword and Shield. I didn't know who Zeraora was, what it looked like, what its typing is. I didn't know anything about this Pokemon until Sword and Shield came around. There was a limited time event thing going on where if the community were to do 100,000 raid dens in, I don't know, a week or something, then everybody would have access to get Zeraora, and it was shiny. It blew my mind. I was like, yo, this is a new Pokemon, this is awesome, because again, I missed out on generations 5, 6, and 7, so obviously it's an old Pokemon, but I didn't know that until I got to a little bit later in Sword and Shield, because to me it was just a new Pokemon. I was like, yo, this thing is super awesome, and I really do love Zeraora, if I'm gonna be honest with you, I do, but I think it would be super interesting to let you guys know that I didn't really use Zeraora in Sword and Shield. Really the only time I would use Zeraora in Sword and Shield was really when I would do raid dens. Other than raid dens, I was never using this Pokemon. I have a theory as to why I really didn't use this Pokemon, but aside from that, there is nothing really concrete other than I just never really used this Pokemon. I don't know if it was just because it was level 100 or I could not give you a definitive reason as to why I never used this Pokemon in Sword and Shield. However, with that said, I did pick up this Pokemon a lot more when it came down to Pokemon Unite. Surprisingly, Pokemon Unite, I had a blast actually playing with Zeraora, and I think when he first came out, I was like, yo, I named this character. This is my character. Of course, for a period of time, I did drop out of Pokemon Unite, but when we came back, I again, of course, decided, hey, I'm gonna try Zeraora again, and now I'm having more fun with Zeraora now than I am, weeks and months ago when we dropped it or take breaks from the game, So Zeraora, pretty interesting character. When it comes to the main series, I don't know much because I was given a level 100 Pokemon. He looks awesome. But when it comes to Pokemon Unite, which I think is more heavily influenced for this Pokemon, it is just so fun to use. I love the movesets. I love everything about this Pokemon, especially when it comes down to Pokemon Unite. Definitely an awesome Pokemon. Beedrill is honestly an interesting Pokemon to even have on this list, I think, because it is one of my favorites, but it's mainly because it's such a simple, but yet, I think personally, really well-designed Pokemon. Like, it's literally just a bee, right? And I get its hands, or what would have been its hands, are drills, and that's it. It does have a Mega Form, which is super awesome, and I know that its Mega Form is supposed to be way better than, obviously, its base one, and Beedrill overall really is just that one Pokemon that for a lot of people, it's just, hey, we're going to pick up this Pokemon and use it because I need to beat maybe this one gym, or got to use it for this one specific thing. That's really it for a lot of people. So again, for me, like, even in real life, I don't even like bees. So I don't know what it is about Beedrill that I just really enjoy so much. I think it's just the simplicity of it, and also a little bit of bias because it does have the poison typing on it, and the poison typing is one of my personal favorite typings in the game. But yeah, I don't know what it is about this bee. I just really love this bee. It's complicated, but I love them. Mawile is actually going to be another Pokemon on this list that's super interesting to a lot of you guys that it's on there, because I really don't use or bring up this Pokemon, like, at all. But I really do like Mawile. Every time I see this Pokemon, I always see that giant mouth thing that it has on its head. It always reminds me of, like, a new version of, like, the giant Venus flytrap monster from the Little Shop of Horrors, right? It kind of gives me that vibe, and I really like that. I really do. I think that's super interesting and awesome that it's like that. But also, if I remember correctly, this is based more on a Japanese monster of a woman whose, like, hair is alive and eats things, and probably people as well, for all I know. But I find that to be super awesome, and I'm kind of like a horror guy, you know? I really am into that stuff. I do find this Pokemon to be very interesting overall, not just because of its origin design, but its typing of Fairy and Steel does not. I don't know if that's the only one, but it's very, like, you don't really see typings like that, so I find that very interesting for Mawile. But not only that, I do love Mawile's movesets. I mean, I literally learned so many different moves. I have ice move, fire moves, electric move, fairy. Like, it knows so much, so I really like that. To me, this Pokemon's like an all-around type Pokemon, can kind of, you know, mix and get into whatever it is you might want. Now, for its base stats in Pokemon games, I don't know. I don't really know if overall this is even a good Pokemon, but it's definitely a Pokemon that I like, and every so often I do like to use this Pokemon. Even most recently, we ended up using it for battling, like, I think teams or something like that. But yeah, I like Mawile. Coming up to some Pokemon that we've actually spoke about, Mienfoo and Mienshao. I love these Pokemon. I really do. So what's super awesome about these Pokemon is the fact that they're weasels. Weasels are really just, like, adorable animals. Like, I looked it up and I was just like, yeah, these guys, I want them as pets. But yeah, they're like adorable animals, and they decided, hey, let's give them, you know, put them in the game, and let's give them the fighting type. You know, they could have probably, you know, normal ground, do something with them, right? But they decided, hey, let's do fighting type, because I don't really know much about the animals. But they decided, hey, let's put them in the game, let's make them fighting type, and they gave them the style of martial arts. Now, when it comes to Pokemon games, and you are a fighting type Pokemon, you typically, like 90% of the time, maybe even a little bit higher than that, like, you have a theme. When you're a fighting Pokemon, you have a theme. There's something to you. Mienshao, Mienfoo, martial arts. You look at, like, Hawlucha and Machamp. They're, like, wrestlers. Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, right? What is that? Boxing and kickboxing. Like, you can look at these Pokemon and go, okay, yeah, that's a type of fighter that it got turned into a Pokemon. You know, that, like, you can tell just by looking at them. Now, with that said, there are some Pokemon that get the fighting type, and it doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, to an extent, I guess it makes sense that you might want to have it. You know, what is it? Pangoro, in my mind, kind of makes sense. You know, he's kind of like from what I can tell, seems like a mean, thuggish type Pokemon, you know. So that kind of makes sense, you know. But a Pokemon such as Phalanx, I don't understand why that's a fighting type Pokemon. And nothing about it says, hey, I'm a fighting type. Look at Beware, for example. Beware is a normal fighting type Pokemon, but when you look at the Pokemon, nothing about it says, hey, I'm a fighting type like I'm a fighter. You look at it and you're like, okay, this is just a giant bear. That's a Pokemon, in my opinion, I feel like should just be a normal type Pokemon. This does not make sense to me that it would be like that. So with that said, that's what makes Mienshao Mienfoo, in my opinion, stand out a lot more compared to some of these other Pokemon, because it at least has a style and a design that work really well together, that makes it stand out compared to the not just other Pokemon in general, but mainly like the fighting type Pokemon. And so if you're not really caring too much about what type your Pokemon is, then I would always, just go straight to Mienshao Mienfoo, regardless of what their base stats are. Like, I just love these Pokemon's designs and everything about them. Coming in at number 11, honestly, is going to be Scorpy, which I think is kind of surprising. I was thinking about putting Drapion, its evolution, in here as well, but I kind of really don't like Drapion that much. I mean, I do like the Pokemon, but would I call it a favorite? Not quite. Scorpy kind of wins it because, let's just be honest, it's an adorable, like, Scorpion. That's kind of it. It does have the poison type, which is what I really like, where its evolution Drapion kind of drops the bug typing for dark, which is really nice and cool, but the Pokemon itself really isn't that great. Like, if we're just gonna be honest, it's not great in terms of its design, and of course it's shiny as well. Scorpy has a better shiny from turning this bluish purple to a red, and then its evolution Drapion is just more or less the same. It kind of sucks, but yeah, that's really it. I always said that if Pokemon were real, this would definitely be one of those Pokemon that I would love to have as a companion Pokemon. Just don't evolve it. Just have it next to me all the time, walking around doing all that crazy stuff. Kind of like Pikachu with Ash, except he uses Pikachu a little too much. We have two Pokemon tied for 10th, and that is Sneasel and Weavile. Now, I was going to add the Hisuian form. However, even though, yes, I like the Hisuian Sneasel, I really don't like Sneasler, which is its evolution. It kind of kills it for me, to be honest. It's, let's say Weavile is in, let's say, S tier. I'd put Sneasler at maybe a B tier. It's kind of mid. I do like the Weavile a lot more. But in defense of Hisuian Sneasel, I do like Hisuian Sneasel because Sneasel has a design that I think works really well. This is a Pokemon that's also based on a Weasel. Sneasel, Weasel. I'm kind of just putting that there. But yeah, this is another Pokemon that's based off of Weasel, which is super awesome. And its design works really well, which is why I feel like with this, Hisuian form, it has essentially a palette swap and looks really good doing so. But again, its evolution into Sneasler kind of kills it for me, and is why we're not really focusing on it too much, and we'll be focusing on its Dark Ice typing, the original form. Now, this Sneasel I really love. Okay, again, its Dark Ice typing I feel like is super unique, and not a lot of people really use a Pokemon like this. And that's kind of it, really. When it comes to Sneasel, I like its design, I like its typing, and its moveset's pretty fair, Now, when it comes to Weavile, it's more or less the same thing. I really like the typing of Dark and Ice, because you don't really see that. Now, every time I do see Weavile, it has these, like, red frills coming off of its head. It's got it around the neck. And then it has a gem on it, in the middle of its head. It reminds me for some reason of like something you would see like on an Egyptian king, for an example, right? Every time I see Weavile, I always think like, this is kind of like a king Pokemon, right? So I've always really liked that. Definitely Weavile is a super just cool and it's just an awesome looking Pokemon overall, and I really like it. But again, it beats Sneasler by a mile, so but yeah, there's definitely just an awesome Pokemon. I love its design. It's shiny, not too much. I mean, I get that it turns pink and stuff, and I do like pink, but I feel like it doesn't really work well with the Pokemon, so I'm going to stick to its original form. Coming in at number 9 is a Pokemon that I really like, but never really ever used in any game so much, or as a part of an official team, and I would love for it to be a part of an official team, is Raichu. Now, first, Raichu's design is so much better than Pikachu's because it's supposed to be based off an electric mouse. And when you look at Pikachu, you can maybe argue, okay, I can see it. But with Raichu, you definitely see it. It's hard to miss. And it works so well for this Pokemon that there's really not much else to say. It's a very simple design. It is a mouse. Let's give it some electric features. Boom, you got yourself a Raichu. And I love it. It works out so well. It doesn't have to be anything too complicated. It's very, I would say, simple, and it works out so well. Now, it does have an Alolan form. There is an Alolan Raichu where it takes on the Psychic typing. So it's electric and Psychic. Now, it does replace some of those electric features of Raichu and replaces them with like little swirls and such to kind of give it more of a Psychic look and feel to it. It's a little bit more softer as well. So it's a good Pokemon, but I prefer its base pure electric type Raichu a lot more than I like its Alolan form. Now, with that said, I did say that I wanted this Pokemon to be a part of an official team or a lore team, and basically what that means for us is that this is a Pokemon that you're going to have pretty much built and ready to go by the end when you battle the Elite Four. Right, we have that for quite a few games. I did that with Pokemon Shield. Granted, it was a little bit late, but I did that with Pokemon Shield, and it was a blast. I really love that team that I have, and we even used it to battle with some of you guys in Pokemon Legends Arceus. It took us a while to figure out our team. I'm very proud of it. I did eventually change the Arcanine for a Ninetales, but I'm still very much proud of that team that I made. Now, when it comes to a game like Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Diamond, we have a problem. In Let's Go Pikachu, I have way too many Pokemon that are level 100 that I really don't remember what Pokemon I used to be the official team and beat the Elite Four, because I have so many different Pokemon that I used to beat the Elite Four with. So it's kind of hard for me to tell, like, was it this, was it that? Like, I can't remember. When it comes to Pokemon Diamond, kind of the same situation, but in reverse. I used a bunch of Pokemon in that game, and then by the end I beat the team, and I remember I didn't like the team I had by the end, and then I was just really upset, and then I ended up doing the whole Pokedex, and it got a little complicated. So what we ended up doing, at least with Pokemon Diamond, I started at Pokemon Pearl. I started chatting with you guys. I was like, hey, we're gonna try to make an official team. This is what I want, this is what we're gonna do, etc, etc. And we ended up making a official team for Pokemon Pearl, and that's kind of what we're going with. Now, I think Raichu can be redeemed here, because when we get Let's Go Eevee, then Raichu can be used for that game as our electric typing Pokemon, as opposed to the partner Pokemon that you get with Let's Go Pikachu, because it's a little too OP and kind of makes the game a lot easier. So that is certainly the plan that we have for Raichu, is to get Let's Go Eevee, get a Pikachu, evolve it into a Raichu, and see where things kind of go from there. Again, a favorite Pokemon of mine. Was going to have it as part of the team in Scarlet, but things just kind of took a different path. So we have two Pokemon again tied, and this is Lilligant and Roserade. Now, specifically more Hisuian Lilligant. I do like regular form of Lilligant, but Hisuian is the one that takes it for me. Now, the thing about Hisuian Lilligant, and it's kind of the theme for them both, is that they're living, like, plant flower things, right? They are the plant themselves that are alive, and I really like that. But when it comes to the Hisuian Lilligant, what I like about it is that it takes on this ballerina style to it, and also it gets the fighting type, which is, again, my third favorite. So Lilligant, I really love that combination of grass and fighting. Nothing new, we've had that before. But again, it's just that ballerina style to the Pokemon. And of course, and I'm pretty sure they knew it, Lilligant's name rhymes with elegant, okay? Lilligant, elegant. And that's really what you see with this Pokemon. I think I see it a little bit more with its Hisuian form as opposed to its regular form. Definitely in both, but you see it a lot more with Hisuian, and I love that so much. And of course, as you saw there, when this Pokemon does, like, was it Victory Dance? It shows off a little bit more of that ballerina style that this Pokemon has, and it's not just a little something that's used with, like, one or two moves. Like, it's something that's just super awesome to see, and I really love this Pokemon. Now, when it comes down to Roserade, again, it's a grass type Pokemon. It's a living plant type thing. What I like about it is that there's kind of layers to it. One, its typing is nice. I love poison type. That's what Roserade is, a grass poison type. But the design of the Pokemon looks awesome, right? When you look at the Pokemon, it has a little bit of elegance to it, right? It's roses all around. The hands are roses. You got the red, you got the blue. It itself is basically a rose Pokemon. Its head is a giant white rose. Looks super good. And of course, if you looked closer, the eyes, it looks like it's wearing a mask. And it looks like it's even wearing a cape. So to me, this is sort of like a female plant, elegant style of what Zoro is, right? Zebra Zoro. That's what that reminds me of. And I really like it. I think it works really well with this Pokemon. What can you argue? So we actually have two Pokemon tied here, and it's two Pokemon that are no surprise because we actually spoke about these two like for a while, like quite often. That is going to be Glaceon and Hawlucha. So I'm actually going to start with Hawlucha on this one because I have so much to say about it. And I guess the best place to start off with it is its design. As you can see, we do have the shiny Hawlucha on here. And the thing, I really love the shiny Hawlucha because I think I like the colors a lot more. But in storytelling with luchadors, typically the person that's wearing like these colors are known as the heel or the bad guy, the villain of the story, because that's what they try to tell you in professional wrestling. It is professional wrestling. It is entertainment. It's people doing their thing and telling you a story along the way. So typically with luchadors, when they wear dark colors like this, primarily the red with the black, and he has a little bit of purple and green for what seems like his mask, those are typically the bad guys. Typically the bad guys are often known to wear dark colors, mainly black, but they typically wear dark toned colors to represent and show that, hey, I'm the bad guy, I'm the villain, hate me while we do our thing. Now, on the opposite end of that spectrum, the good guys, the face, the heroes of the story are typically going to be the luchadors wearing the more brighter colors. So whenever you see just a regular Hawlucha, you will see that they're mainly just all white with green with little bits of red and I think yellow in there. So it's very different. You can look at the luchadors, or the Hawluchas in this case, look at them and compare regular to shiny, and you can go, okay, this one is primarily white, the colors are a lot lighter, this is the good guy, while the other one, even though it's mainly black and red, you can say, okay, that one's more the villain. So I really see that when it comes with these Pokemon. Also, I don't know if this is also maybe referencing it, but the style of luchador, I think nowadays we kind of call more high flyer wrestlers, right? They're typically your smaller guys, not super big, bulky, and buff. They're typically your smaller guys that will, go to the top ropes and they'll jump off doing flips and stuff, or they'll bounce off of them, and they're always doing some crazy things with, flying in the air, because one, it's an awesome, interesting technique that everybody really likes, and it's, I don't want to say exclusive to luchadors, but luchadors are basically wrestlers with masks on. So we've definitely seen high flying wrestlers before, ones that don't wear masks, and they do some of these things, and I'm wondering, out of curiosity, because it is a Pokemon that is a bird and it flies and it's mixed with luchador wrestling themes, is it more taking on the tones of a high flyer wrestler? I'm a little bit curious on that. I hope that is intentional, because that is what I see with this Pokemon. Speaking of high flying wrestlers and high flying techniques, it also has a signature move, I believe, called the Flying Press, which when it hits a Pokemon, it'll either hit you with a flying type or a fighting type. It really depends on what your weakness is. So what I find to be interesting about that is the move called Flying Press, where to me that kind of sounds like what we would call like a crossbody, or any really high flying moves where you're jumping off like the top rope and then you kind of use your body to slam against the other person. So I think there's just what I just find so interesting, because again, I grew up with luchadors and all this stuff, that I find it interesting that they put so much of the luchador stuff within this one Pokemon, and I kind of hope that at some point in the future they maybe make like another luchador type Pokemon that can maybe be I guess like the official enemy of the Hawlucha. I hope so. If it doesn't already have one, I hope that eventually in the future it gets one. Moving on over to Glaceon, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Again, I don't have as much to say about this Pokemon as I do with the Hawlucha. But, honestly, this was a Pokemon I really didn't like for a while. I mean, like, it was kind of mid-tier, if I'm going to be honest. I was like, it's okay. I mean, it's just Ice Eevee. But then I picked up Ice Eevee over in Pokemon Unite, and I was like, wow, this Pokemon is fun. It's incredible. I was like, wow, how have I not picked up this Pokemon before? Glaceon, at least with Pokemon Unite in the build that I was using, it does some pretty crazy damage, and I love it. I love it so much. I was just like, it really changed my mind. It honestly did. It changed my mind a lot about this Pokemon. Now, obviously, comparing it to Eevee, maybe they could have made some design changes, but I think if it was not for Pokemon Unite, Glaceon would not have been up here because this Pokemon is just incredible. It's amazing. I really love how they made Glaceon play out within Pokemon Unite. It's just insanely strong, pretty fast, and that's kind of it. That's all I really play as when I'm Glaceon. I'm like, I want to do as much damage as I can. Let's get some kills, this and that. Like, it's just super awesome and fun. I love Glaceon. Now, with that said, I did notice that with the main games, like let's say Scarlet and Violet, Diamond and Pearl, just to list a few, that in those games, I noticed that I'm like, hey, I want to get an ice Pokemon on the team, right? Like I'm just like, I want to get an ice Pokemon on the team. Like, I'll get rid of water for ice, or I'll get rid of fire for ice. Like just as an example, I'm just like, man, I really want an ice Pokemon on the team now. And now every time I think that, I'm gonna end up thinking about Glaceon, because Glaceon is, I believe its stats, even in the main game, it's a really good special attacker. Now, I think there isn't that many things that are weak to ice, but hey, Glaceon is still pretty dope and might be an epic attacker also in the main games. I won't know until we try it out. This is a Pokemon that we've talked about here and there, but we really kind of stopped talking about it after a while, and that is Flygon. Now, Flygon by design is a really friendly Pokemon. I mean, you look at this thing and you know this is a friendly Pokemon. If you need more proof, just look at the anime. I think even some of the movies have Flygon in it. And every time you see Flygon, it's always like friendly and kind of cooperative with the other Pokemon in the environment, right? So Flygon, like, kind of by default is always just this friendly Pokemon, and I really like it. And you can tell just by its design, because when you look at it, it's like, hey, this isn't scary or intimidating or anything, as compared to the Vigavolt, where if you see Vigavolt, you're probably going to be a little standoffish. You're like, okay, this Pokemon might attack me. So that's what I really like, that Flygon just kind of by default, or maybe in its nature, is just a really, like, kind and friendly Pokemon. And its typing of ground and dragon I personally kind of like, and those are typings that I would want on a team. And I've said it before with Sword and Shield when I made like 5 different teams, that this is something that I wanted, and the hard choice was to pick between Flygon and Garchomp, and I went with Flygon for one team and then Garchomp with another team, because their speeds are practically similar. I believe Flygon is faster than Garchomp, but Garchomp, I believe, has a better attack and better defense as opposed to Flygon. So it just kind of makes sense that a lot of people would just go with Garchomp over Flygon. But again, I just kind of love Flygon by design a lot more than I would with Garchomp. No hate on Garchomp, but I like Flygon more. Plus, he knows Levitate, so that means if there's any ground moves, like for example Earthquake, if someone were to do that, he avoids it. So that's what I really like. And I also mentioned way back when that if Pokemon were real, I would love to have this Pokemon. And the main reason is because if you could fly anywhere you want, I would love to have Flygon be that Pokemon. I would love to just have like a saddle on its back, similar to how it was in Pokemon Sun and Moon, right? If you ever watched the show, one of them has a Flygon and it has like a little saddle on its back, and they just ride the Flygon. And that's what I would love to do, is just get on a Flygon and just fly wherever I wanted. This Pokemon is just awesome. I love it. It's adorable. In 5th place, we have ourselves Gligar and Gliscor. Now, what's interesting about Gligar, for one, is its design. I really love its design. It kind of looks like a little demon, right? It's like a mix of a bat and a scorpion. I don't know how they did that, but I really love it. I just love this Pokemon. It's adorable, honestly. But what I also find really interesting, aside from just being a really good Pokemon to use, is its typing. It is ground and flying, and that's really what made me kind of draw even more attention to this Pokemon and want to use this Pokemon, because I wanted a Pokemon that was ground type, but the fact that it also had flying was like icing on the cake to me, right? And then the fact that it evolves into Gliscor was even better, because I'm like, hey, this is an even better Pokemon. But I looked into it a little bit more. There's not a lot of Pokemon with that typing. There's not a lot. There's like 2 or 3 other Pokemon aside from Gligar and Gliscor that have this typing, and it's a legendary Pokemon. So really, this typing seems to be very unique to Gligar and Gliscor. But because of that typing, I get a lot of advantages with it in Legends Arceus, and it has awesome move pool that I would kind of seek out with like 2 other Pokemon, but now it's all wrapped up into one, and I just really love that. So a fun fact about Gliscor, I actually used to like Gliscor just because of its design alone. I mean, look how intimidating it is. This looks like if Batman were to have his own Pokemon, right? It's a mix of it, like it's so intimidating. It's still keeping that demon look to it, you know, mix of a bat and a scorpion, you know, with the big pincers. It's got the big glowing yellow eyes, sharp fangs, big ears, that tail with the little barbs at the end of it that you don't want to get hit with. Like, it's such an intimidating Pokemon, and it's such a good Pokemon because of its moveset, being able to learn ground moves, flying moves, hell, even poison moves. This Pokemon pretty much has it all. It's literally everything that I wanted, and I know for a fact if you guys also had this Pokemon on your team, you would also like this Pokemon. It doesn't have to necessarily have the same moves that I had, but if you had something, hell, maybe even similar or just, hell, completely different, it's probably going to help you out as much as it did for me. Now, this Pokemon alone, by design, would probably still be on my top 15, just a lot lower. The reason why it's this high up is because of the fact that it's just so good, and I wish it was in more games, but it's not in the new game, and from what I can tell, it's not even in some of the older ones either, so kind of a shame. But this is such a good Pokemon. I love it. You really cannot go wrong with this Pokemon. In 4th place, we have tied Croagunk and Toxicroak. Now, when it comes down to Croagunk, personally, I just love, it's kind of simple, really. It's just a poisonous frog. There's really nothing too crazy about it. Now, if we were to go into it a little bit more, it does have the poison type as well as the fighting type, so my 1st and 3rd favorite typing. When this Pokemon, you could, like, personality wise, you can really see, like, I guess mainly because of the 2 typings, it's pretty darn aggressive. You could see that in the show as well, but when you play like Legends Arceus, you definitely see how aggressive this Pokemon is. And at first, I feel like it's kind of underrated. I feel like it's a Pokemon that does really well, and a lot of people should, maybe kind of pick up on Croagunk a little bit more. But of course, it does evolve into Toxicroak. Now, for Toxicroak, honestly, I really love this Pokemon because look at it. It's a lot more intimidating now than it would be if it was a Croagunk. And even by looking at it, you can tell it's an evolution of Croagunk, right? It's got the more mean eyes. Sort of looks like it has a sinister smile. It's got claws now. It's got a horn. Like, just overall, this Pokemon looks a lot more intimidating and scary, and I really like that for this Pokemon. And even in its battle stance, it seems like it has more energy, right? It's sort of doing a little bob, right? It's kind of doing a little hop. I really love that for this Pokemon. And I think another reason why I like this Pokemon a lot more now than I did before was because of the fact that it was an ace Pokemon for my Legends Arceus team, the other one being Gliscor. Now, with that said, when I first saw a wild Croagunk, I was just like, okay, this might be a temporary thing, because I had originally wanted to get a Roserade, but because I had saw Badoo's and I understood, okay, Badoo evolves to Roserade, and I didn't want to have like 50 poison Pokemon ready to like on me. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna, drop Roserade for now because getting Badoo to evolve is kind of a pain in the neck as is. And I was like, you know what, we'll go with, with the Croagunk. And after a while, I was like, you know what, Croagunk might be the Pokemon for the team, the MVP. And sure enough, as time went on, we definitely saw so much come out of this Croagunk, of course evolving into a Toxicroak and definitely carrying in so many different battles, and its diverse moveset of poison. I think it had a ground, fighting. It helped out so much, and it was just an incredible Pokemon. I don't see why more people aren't using this Pokemon. It's definitely overlooked. Now, a big surprise coming in at third place is actually going to be Ledian. Now, I think this is a big surprise because nobody would have seen this coming, but I've said it multiple times on streams before that Ledian is that Pokemon that if I were to have a, companion Pokemon, like how Ash has Pikachu always outside of its Pokeball, I would have Ledian because Ledian is just such a adorable Pokemon, right? It's so small, it's adorable. Hell, even its hands look like boxing gloves. Just so much about this Pokemon that's adorable. Now, normally I wouldn't have this Pokemon on the team, but because of the Diamond and Pearl remakes, they allow you to walk with the Pokemon, so I made an exception and allowed this Pokemon to be on the team. But other than that, even in real life, I probably wouldn't even have this Pokemon out battling, like maybe once in a while, maybe, but this is a Pokemon that I just love to have around. It's just an adorable companion Pokemon. I'm sorry, not sorry, but that's literally the only reason why it's in third place. It's just such an adorable Pokemon, and I love it. I love it. For second place, we have, I believe, the final tie, and that is Ninetales and Alolan Ninetales. Now, I will be starting off with Alolan Ninetales because I think this is the bigger influence here. But overall, Ninetales' design I really like. It's based off of Kitsune, which is in Japanese folklore the Ninetale fox, which is either going to be good or bad. It really kind of just depends on which version of it, I guess, you're reading of. But when it came down to Alolan Ninetales, really for me, it was kind of iffy. It's an ice Pokemon, which I liked. But then before, I didn't really like Fairy too much. And then, of course, later down the line, if you guys ever watch my streams, I'm always like, man, I need a Fairy type Pokemon. So I'm not really sure why. Before, I just never thought, hey, let me just add Ninetales. Because it's a typing I need and a typing I like. So, I don't understand why I never used this Pokemon before. Especially since when it was first introduced, at least when I seen it in the show, I really like the way that Alolan Ninetales was presented. It had such a style to it that I really liked. And then, of course, again, playing the Pokemon Unite game, getting back into that game, I picked up Alolan Ninetales, and it really, I just loved the character, the way that they made Alolan Ninetales work in that game, and really, that's my main, right? So, all these things came together, and I'm just like, man, I really love Alolan Ninetales, and that's what really made me disappointed with Scarlet and Violet, because they don't have Alolan Ninetales in the game, which is fine. I could work around that, but I was sad to hear that it was not in the new game. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys about Ninetales. I had a falling out with this Pokemon, and I think the main reason for that is because of the fact that I missed out on 4 generations of Pokemon, right? So, as a kid, I used to play lots and lots and lots of Leaf Green. If you guys know, there wasn't really that many options for fire Pokemon in that. I think there's 5. Unless you traded and got an Arcanine Growlithe from somebody else, then I guess technically 6. But in the base game alone, and of course as a kid, I didn't have the link cable and somebody else who had the other game. It was just basically me by myself. So at that time, really the only options were to get Charmander, which I never really did. You could get Moltres, which is the legendary bird, but I always struggled with the birds, and eventually I remembered how to do it. But really your only options at that time for that game was Ninetales, Rapidash, and Magmar. I didn't really like Magmar too much. I really liked Ninetales, and I remember using Ninetales quite a lot. From time to time, I would use Rapidash, but my main was always Ninetales for that game. Then, of course, after a while, Generation 3 came out, and I played that. And then Generation 4, I believe that was, the DS with Diamond and Pearl. I played that, and then from everything from there all the way to Sword and Shield, I missed out on. So when Sword and Shield came out, I was super hyped and excited because to me, all those Pokemon were new to me. They were obviously, you know, old for you guys, but they were all new to me. So I think you could find Vulpix in the world there. But at that time, again, all these Pokemon were new to me. So that's kind of why I believe at that time I was using like Salazzle and like Colossal and, you know, just all these different fire Pokemon, because again, to me, these were completely new. I didn't really want to use a lot of the old Pokemon. I really wanted to use a lot more of the newer ones. But I would definitely like to just, again, kind of thank Pokemon Unite for at least making Alolan Ninetales really good in my eyes, because now that kind of re-sparked that flame that I had, no pun intended, with Ninetales, or the regular form for Ninetales. Because now, if I ever go into a game, like when I go back into Legends Arceus, I don't even like having Hisui and Arcanine. Now I want it to be just regular old Ninetales. From this point forward, you know, any maybe fire type Pokemon, if I'm not using Ninetales, then I'll maybe use the other form of Ninetales and use Alolan. So I don't know, it's just a perfectly well designed Pokemon. Again, I have history with the regular form Ninetales, and now I'm making history with its Alolan form. So it's definitely a Pokemon that has a place in my heart all the time and always will have. This is Bisharp, no clue what he's supposed to be based on. Really like it. Kind of reminds me of like one of those giant mech things that you would see in the movies. Other than that, I just think he looks overall really badass. And his shiny form, I prefer a lot more, just because my favorite color is blue, and I prefer blue way more than red. Bayonet's design is basically a doll possessed by a ghost. It's super awesome. I really like it, and even its Mega is really dope. Obviously, the Mega is not in every game, but this is a nice little ghost Pokemon. Articuno, one of the 3 legendary birds, another favorite of mine. It is a ice type, flying type. It is beautiful. Honestly, it's really gorgeous out of all of them. Very underrated in my opinion. Would love to see more of this Pokemon. Salazzle is super awesome. It is a Pokemon that is a poison fire type, which I find to be really unique. I don't know if there's any other Pokemon like that. But not only that, Salazzle is by default the better form of Salandins, because only the females can evolve, not the males. Not only that, its shiny form looks really awesome and unique. It turns into an albino, which I really like. And yeah, that's kind of it, really. I mean, by design, it's just a awesome female lizard. I don't know what else can really be said about this Pokemon. Sorry for the bad resolution, but we do have Corviknight on here. Clearly looks like it's based off of a crow, but it's also a knight, hence the name Corviknight. Looks super badass. Love it. Don't use it too often, but when it first came out, I did definitely use it. It's intimidating, but seems like a very trusting and loyal Pokemon as well. So there's a lot going on for this Pokemon. I really like it. It has a unique shiny, but I think I prefer just its default look. Froslass is based off of a folklore in Japan of a woman who died in the snowy mountains, and now her spirit haunts said snowy mountain. And if you were to really take that and turn it into a Pokemon, that's literally what this Pokemon is. Only the females can turn into Froslass, and it is a ghost ice type, which is super awesome. And not to mention that has incredible stats, by the way. I mean, this is like a really fast Pokemon that can kind of hit you pretty hard. So, loving this Pokemon. Mewtwo is just an awesome Pokemon around. I mean, literally every time this Pokemon shows up, you know some stuff's gonna go down. Literally the main character in a few Pokemon movies. It showed up in the show, right? Even in the games, it's a Pokemon you really want because he's just so strong, this Pokemon, and so awesome. Not only that, this is also a Pokemon I really like from playing Smash Brothers as well. Dating all the way back to Smash Bros. Melee and jumping all the way to the current Smash Bros. Ultimate, where I love playing Mewtwo. Miss Drevis and Miss Magius are really awesome by design because they are literally just like witches that turn into ghosts, or maybe ghosts that turn into witches. Not really sure which way that works, but I really like it by design. Really haven't used this Pokemon too much, but I always really like this Pokemon. Zubat, Golbat, Crobat, super awesome Pokemon. Literally, they are just bats, and I like it. I don't know. It's simple. It's nothing too crazy. I just love these bat Pokemon. Zamazenta, honestly, an interesting, awesome Pokemon. It is a wolf that's basically just covered in armor. It's literally coming from the game Pokemon Shield, where by default it is a fighting type, but when you give it the Crowning Shield item, it gains the steel typing, and you know, its defense goes up and all this stuff. Really strong. Obviously, it's a legendary Pokemon, so it's kind of broken in some aspects, but super awesome Pokemon. I love it. Is it even a surprise that, of course, Toxtricity is #1 on this list? I mean, it feels kind of obvious, right? Of course, Toxtricity, #1. Why? Because for one, the design of this Pokemon is really good. It's supposed to be like a lizard rock star type thing, and it works really well in my opinion. I love that, you know, on its hands it has the horns on it, kind of like those spiked bracelets that people would have. Even has what looks like a spiked belt, and it works sort of also as like a tail, it seems like. And of course it has spikes on its back, which is just kind of nice to have. But the thing on its chest, I don't really know what you call those things, but it strums it like a guitar. And I think, depending the game, I swear that it strums its chest to do attacks in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which I have been streaming lately. But it does its attacks strumming its chest in Scarlet and Violet, where in Sword and Shield, it really doesn't do that. It just kind of shouts at you, you know? So two different Rockstar approaches, I guess, but I like both of them. I just like to say it depends the moves. Of course, we have its G-Max form, where it looks more like a lizard, and kind of combines the two Toxtricity forms into one, because you can see now it has like 3 mohawks. It has the main yellow one down the middle with the 2 blue on the side. Its chest has the 2 different colors of yellow and blue, and even the way it attacks, it pulls out a electric guitar, like a literal guitar made of electricity, and smashes it right then and there. Kind of like how rock stars would often have their guitars, they'll play the song, whatever, and by the end they're just breaking them, right? That's what that reminds me of, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of a cool detail, right? So there's a lot of things going on to it. I mean, even like the thing I was saying, like the tail, the belt part, when it's a G-Max, it looks like it completely changes into, I don't even know what they're called, but it looks like something that would amplify electricity even more, right? So there's a lot going on for this Pokemon. Now, of course, G-Max form is not going to stay, because that is just a Sword and Shield exclusive type thing. But, of course, again, Toxtricity's design overall I really love, and I think it just works super well with its shiny form. And I want to get shiny Toxtricity in any game possible. Now, personally, when I caught this Pokemon, I didn't know it was shiny. Or rather, I should say, when I was going to catch it, I didn't know it was shiny. Because I had went into a raid den, I saw that it was its G-Max form, and I said, you know what, I want to catch that, because that looks super cool. I want whatever that is. So I go into the den. I'm not paying much attention. You know, I pull out whatever Pokemon beats electric or poison or whatever. And then, you know, I go into the raid. I'm not paying attention. I put like my Switch down. I'm doing like maybe watching YouTube or something, and I hear the shiny noise. And I was like, did I hear that right? And then I look at my, you know, my tablet, my little Switch, and I see that my teamer has like 1 or 2 shiny Pokemon were out. And I was like, oh, okay, well maybe it's one of these guys with their shiny Pokemon. Like, I didn't think much of it. So I go ahead, I battle this Pokemon, I catch it, and sure enough, when it pops up on the thing, it's pink, and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my god, I just caught shiny Toxtricity, and it has G-Max. Like, I'm losing my mind, like, oh my god, right? So from that point forward, if I remember correctly, I end up using Toxtricity for essentially the remainder of the game, right? From whenever I caught it all the way to the end of the game, and even past that, right, when we start battling some of you guys. But Toxtricity was always like that ace Pokemon, because surprisingly, he's pretty strong, and he is faster than most Pokemon, surprisingly. Like, he seems to always be attacking first compared to most. So that's what I really love about this Pokemon. He's been my ace Pokemon ever since Sword and Shield, or I guess just Shield. And then I think what really made it concrete was the fact that I would play a little bit of PvP with you guys, right? We'll get some of you guys to hop in, we'll battle you guys. And one thing that stood with me was like, wow, your Toxtricity is annoying, or wow, your Toxtricity is really good. That was the only thing that stood with me. And I was like, you know what? This is my guy. This is it. This is my Pokemon. So that's it. But of course, we also have this Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, and I used this Pokemon. As soon as I found out that this Pokemon was in the game, I dropped all my other Pokemon, and now I'm like, what a completely different set of Pokemon that I would have had before, right? So I really love it. I love Toxtricity. Again, ever since I got him, he has been by far the best Pokemon I've ever had, and I would hope that in the future that we can get some more Pokemon, or rather more Pokemon games with Toxtricity in it, so that he can beat up those Pokemon. So I'm honestly really glad and happy that Toxtricity was a original with Pokemon Sword and Shield, because that's when I got back into Pokemon, and I'm so glad that this is the Pokemon that is my number 1.